March last year, and our first hybrid meeting with members of the public able to join us in the town hall, with members of the committee in the town hall, and members of the public also able to participate online. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, so by attending this meeting you are deemed to have consented to this. Just one note before I start, please. I have agreed with the clerk that the next town centre management meeting will be on Tuesday the 17th of August rather than the 7th of September to maintain the 3-month cadence. Okay, are there any apologies for absence?
There aren't.
No apologies for absence received. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Public open session. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak? First, members of the public that are in the town hall.
There are no physical attendees in the training room. And there's one attendee, Councillor Mark Foster, in the Zoom panel.
Thank you. Your audio isn't very clear, so I think we heard there is someone with you. Would that person like to speak?
There's nobody in the training room with us, Councillor
okay,
Foster.
fine. No one in the training room.
No.
Okay, one remote attendee. Got it. That's public open session then. We have no invited speakers, so straight on to minutes of the last meeting. So I propose to go through all of the minutes, including exempt. If there are any corrections or matters arising on exempt, if necessary, we can take that later in the meeting. So for accuracy first, page 1, any accuracy comments? Page 2. Councillor Page.
Just very picky, but on the matters arising. Oh, I was going to say on the matters arising, we have the letters in the wrong place. Not in the wrong place, it's matters arising. Sorry.
Okay. Any other corrections on page 2? Page 3. Page 4. So now moving on to the exempt minutes, page 5. And finally, page 6. If I could just make one comment, page 6 also appears to be numbered page 5. So if that could be corrected, please. Okay, starting again, this time for matters arising. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3.
Yes.
That's not.
It says here, public conveniences. This item needs to be added to the next agenda. And I don't believe that.
Would the clerk like to comment on that?
No, public conveniences is not on this agenda.
So if I may respond, there is an item later on Century House. So perhaps that will in part cover it.
I can do more.
Yeah, I've just got one correction. I know the matters arising, I don't know if it got mentioned, but the date was given on Thursday, 11th of March 2020 rather than 2021 on the minutes. I don't know if that was picked up.
Wait, which page is that?
First page, front page.
Very top. 21.
Well spotted. Thank you. Councillor Albo.
I want to.
Fantastic. Any other matters arising on page 3? No. Page 4. Moving to the exempt, page 5. Councillor Pennington.
Yeah, I think we can cover this in open business. The parking permits policy, the resolution in terms of granting the further extensions, can you confirm whether they've all been sent out to the residents and the extensions and to the workers? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other matters arising on page 5? And finally, page 6. Fantastic. Okay, so I'll move that the minutes are approved with the corrections mentioned. Will anyone second that, please? Councillor Pullinger, thank you. Show of hands to approve the minutes, please. Okay, I think that's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Where are we next? Item 4 consideration, number 7, market feedback, 7A. Councillor Page, may I ask you to introduce the report, please?
Yes, so thank you, Councillor Knight. We've tried to, at the last Council Management Committee meeting, it was agreed to engage with Meg Green and Hannah Abel for Made Way to help them to transform our market. That engagement started then very quickly after the last ECM meeting. We then adopted the strategy for the market for council a couple of weeks later, and over the last few months we've been working very closely with them and the staff to execute on some of that strategy. I don't plan to go through all of this report. I don't think Councillor Knight does either, but if there are any questions, I'm sure we're happy to deal with those. There are a number of recommendations at the end, which I'll speak to for a moment. So, retain service. So, recommendation 1: to retain services and until the end of August. Part of the thinking here is to capture the next TCM meeting. Basically, there's been a lot more to do on the market than was perhaps initially considered. And as a result, it's going to take perhaps an extra month to get to sort of the target state, which is fine, but we hope that could be accepted by the committee. Recommendation 2: to review the market strategy in the next TCM on the 17th of August. Again, we agreed to adopt the market strategy for a period of approximately 6 months from a council meeting, which I think was towards the end of March. So that would be a good time to revisit that strategy, either as a committee or as full council, but I think at TCM would be appropriate. And then to endorse the recommendations and next steps outlined in this report, which is at a very high level to push on as we are with improved publicity, to continue recruiting new traders, to set up a sort of new process which can then be handed over to our town council staff to run this in BAU as smoothly as possible. Also to push on things with erecting gazebos and buskers, which are quite important to enticing new traders and residents into the town centre as well. So I'll stop talking there. I'm sure members have questions, but happy to take any comments. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. Just before I do, Councillor Bond is on his way. He was looking in his email for the link for the meeting. So, first question was, obviously this report was submitted before last weekend, so we don't have the numbers for last weekend. It would be good to know how many stores we had last weekend. Second question is really around, will we continue to have the working group meetings outside of the committee just to help make sure things keep moving?
Certainly answer the first point. I counted there were 19 commercial stores plus 1 charity store, so a total of 20 last Saturday.
So for the working group, I think one of the challenges we had is that lines become a little bit blurred because there was Councillor Knight and myself ended up doing a bit of the heavy lifting on some of the operational things. Obviously, with Meg and Hannah, they're very used to working in the private sector, so not so used to engaging with necessarily council staff and the dynamic that we have with councillors, or they have with councillors. So I think, for me, I think there is still merit in the working group meeting ad hoc as and when required, and there's probably good sense in the working group meeting again, perhaps to look over the policy. Perhaps when some of that has been redrafted, it's due to be revised in June, July. So I feel that's something that, for me, I think that needs to obviously come to staff so that they have their view, but I think the working group is the place to scrutinise that before bringing a final product either to TC or to council. So in my mind, absolutely the working group still would be.
Councillor Abbo.
Yes, Chair. The last paragraph on page 1 mentions a temporary onboarding process. I'm not sure I'd use onboarding myself, but it's also on the next page when it talks about next steps. It's talking about investment required to make the process less manual. So I wonder if we could hear some more details of what this process is at the moment and what is necessary to make it a permanent process rather than a temporary process.
I think Councillor just
Just to, so this was brought up, part of this at least, at the website working group today. So one of the things that is planned through the website working group is to use functionality on the website to aid with that process of both the onboarding of traders and also the payments that traders make for the market. That's part of the answer, I'm sure, either Clark or Councillor Page.
Yes, so it's a good question, and this is something that we've tussled with quite a bit. So the original process for becoming a trader was to phone up the market superintendent, which is okay, but didn't help to plan the market that far in advance. So the new process, which is sort of interim, was pulling together a list of our traders and getting a semi-regular communication so we could get an idea of who's attending each week. Not complicated, not onerous, not terribly complicated, but surprisingly manual, because there are some who are only attending every other week. There are some who are very weather dependent. There are others who, like some of the craft traders, they wanted to try it out but didn't want to come back again. So we needed sort of an interim process, which is still running with, and I think is working better, particularly because we're seeing 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 stalls now rather than the 12 or 13 we had before. So something's working there. The question then is, what does the target state look like? It can't be the market superintendent having to call up every single stallholder to see if they're going to be there every week. It needs to be something that gives him the ability to plan the layout in advance, which he does very well. It's just, how can we do that? The website is going to probably play a part in it, but it remains to be seen what that sort of future process looks like. But I think the one thing we have all learned is it is a heck of a task bringing all of those stalls together. It's a big job, and there's always going to be a manual element to it, particularly on the day and the planning in advance of it. It's just how do we make life as easy as possible and that as smooth as possible. So I think we'll come back to council with that with some detail in due course.
A good example of how difficult it is for the market superintendent, and I was talking to him on Saturday, was the weather obviously at the moment is difficult to call. So at 6 o'clock in the morning when he's making preparations, he has no real absolute sense of who's going to be turning up. Should the road be closed? Should the road be closed? I don't know. I can't make that call. And sometimes, because we want a good relationship with the shops in our community, we need to get that right balance. Yep. So actually getting that electronic or digital connection works better for the whole planning process. It works. The market then complements the shops complement the market. Yep.
Councillor Strawn.
May I make a suggestion in that respect? Often with, say, the NHS, they send a text message saying, are you attending the appointment, or reminding you of the appointment? Would something like that be a possibility? Because on the Saturday morning at 6 o'clock, if it went out, then the traders could respond quite quickly, which would then give the market superintendent an idea that it's very easy, provided people work with that. Because even with my non-smartphone, I can get text telling me that I've got an appointment and I can respond as necessary. So that may be easier in some respects, particularly if people are travelling. If they just get a text reminder saying, "Oh, you coming?" Say yeah.
That's right. We're getting a bit of feedback. That's right, but even that is quite manual for the market superintendent potentially to juggle among 30-something traders. So I think where we may end up, and I'm speculating, is, and I'll float this with the market superintendent, he said there's some merit in it potentially, is pay online, maybe pay for 6 weeks and get a 7th week free or something like that. That then gives him some certainty that trader has potentially paid, or has paid, and then we have some knowledge that they're going to turn up. But we need to thrash that out with the market superintendent.
Forgive me, I thought they were already paying online under the proposals here. Are they not yet?
Not yet.
Because once they're paying online, then part of that question is covered, but it still doesn't allow for the situation on the day. So personally, I still think it would be well worth setting up that kind of text messaging. Nothing's perfect, but I think it would, if it helps the supermarket superintendent to a 20% degree, that's 20% better off than it was before.
Yeah. Any other comments? So Russell.
Can I just take up Councillor Alban's point? Do we have to use onboarding? Please, it's not really what I call English.
Okay. Would you like to propose an alternative?
Engaging new traders. There are other words that could be used.
Councillor Alban.
Yeah, on page 2, the final paragraph, there's mention of sponsorship. Now, what is meant by sponsorship in this context?
Can't actually find that word at the moment. So, Councillor Page. Yeah.
Basically, that we have a social media page for the market. You post something, a photo, a video, or something like that, and you can put some money behind it, and it will appear in more people's news feeds. So we've done that so far, as the report explains. We spent about £20-something just to reach new people that we otherwise would have been. So sponsoring a post.
Okay, right.
Paid for advertising, essentially.
I was fearful that it might mean some other kind of sponsorship.
No, sorry.
So far, the only advertising that's been done is really to advertise the market as a whole. So £26 has been spent to promote the market. No money has been spent promoting individual traders. That's been just free posts. Any other comments? Okay, so there are some recommendations here. Would anyone like to propose that we've got those?
I'd like to propose these 3 recommendations.
Okay, do I have a seconder? So Russell, thank you. Can I have a show of hands? Any favour? Thank you. Is that unanimous? I think it was. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Let's one more very brief comment, not relevant to the recommendations. Just on the operations side, I think one of the banners at Dan Albert car park is vanished. It was there, I don't know where it's gone. If we're okay to get a new banner, we'll find out what's happened to the original one, and perhaps get it mounted like the bicycles website, so that it looks really good and professional. We could get another one for the pocket park as well. I think that'd be good to connect the retail park to the
Okay. I'm going to ask the place shaping manager to respond, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that we have got the other banner. It was taken down because it needed expert. A frame will be made for it so that we can go back up.
Councillor Bond.
I was only going to say that obviously it was only there with cable ties and so on, these mounting, and when we actually order these banners, we should actually try and get them the right size so they fit the railings rather than having to, because they're much larger than the full length. The one we had there is much larger than the full length of the posts and rail.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then. So item 7B, the Welcome Back Fund. I'm going to ask the place shaping manager to introduce this. Just before I do that, I spotted a slight inconsistency, I think. So the agenda speaks about a deadline of the 24th of May. The letter from Councillor Collins mentions the 28th of May. So perhaps in your introduction, you should clarify that as well, please.
Yes, the date has changed so that the place manager can actually bring all the potential bids forward and he can compile his report.
So the correct date is the 24th. Thank you.
Thank you. The Welcome Back Fund has been is part of a £56 million fund that the government has put forward with enhancing town centres to bounce back from the lockdown to give some much needed funds to bring things forward, so that town centres are able to once again flourish. There are, I have put in here in the instructions that the some suggestions on items that we could consider to go forward for this bid. I've looked in there and also gone through with the place manager at Central Beds to confirm that these would be eligible for consideration.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? Councillor Page.
Yeah, thank you for the same for the report as well. So there are some things on here which seem certainly very sensible. There are others which probably necessary, but I guess that's down to the very tight scope of where this pot of money is available. You can't just spend it on anything we'd like to. As I found out when I took the CCTV, I don't think that's something which is going to be appropriate to do in this fund. So I think there are a few things on here which are definite yeses. There are some which are probably definite no's, like a phone app. I don't think we're quite ready for that yet. And to produce that in a very short period of time without a plan, I think is, you always have to be careful that although this money is available to us, we've got to be careful that we're diligent with it and not wasteful. So, I mean, I have a list of a few things that I felt could be a good suggestion, but these shutting down funds causing nonsense. So, I think the gazebos is a good idea. The gazebos that we have at the moment in the market are very manual to the top, which and they're not very weatherproof. They're literally umbrellas. They could take off. I thought maybe some planters as well, if done strategically. We have the deputy public health manager who has a lot of expertise in that, so maybe that's an option to bring some colour to ground level. I put football counters as well. I know we're coming to that later on the agenda, but if that's something as a one-off investment that could be considered, then I think there could be some merit in that, which would be a sensible money to do that. On the market, maybe some money behind buskers, maybe some behind advertising, and since we just, maybe we're a bit late with the roles of Megan and Hannah able, we've extended that to August now, but I don't know whether money might be available to be diverted in this fund, so that frees up our money for other things. So the final one I was thinking about was maybe stretching out as far as the Christmas offering as well, perhaps reinvesting in the light show and something. Those are the things that came off the top of my head. I'm touching on some of the things there. Some of I haven't done so much detail on, but happy to listen to others' thoughts.
Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. So yes, I have very similar thoughts overall to Councillor Page. The ones I guess that are essentially a little bit different that I had. So rather than necessarily just focusing on the Christmas event, I thought it might be worth looking at. I think suggests a summer food festival here. I think that might be a bit soon to get arranged, but maybe some form of autumn event. Making better use of our Sundays as well to pull people into the town centre on Sundays. So I think we've seen from the size of the market as we've got it now, I think it would be very difficult to hold, say, a farmer's market on the same day as our Saturday market. We just don't have the room. So maybe having something like the farmer's market on the Sunday, and I think gazebos to make available for that in particular, but also for our general market provision would be something worth investing in. Also maybe having some kids activities on those days as well, so something to draw families into the town centre, the buskers that we have on a Saturday and maybe those on a Sunday as well. I think you mentioned football counters, more temporary barriers. I know we've got some, but I know there have been some problems with those, the ones we've got falling over. So whether it's a case of investing in sandbags, or whether it's a case of better designed barriers that we could be using. Consumables. So I think we've possibly already got enough, I don't know, of the actual dispensers for hand gel, but we could maybe get some more hand gel, because that we've only got so much, and I think consumables are covered within the criteria. And then the other idea suggested, which I think is a good one, which is temporary but could have good potential use for the future, is around the planters, and having some planters which we can use maybe to direct where people might walk now, but in the future could be used as part of our annual sort of offering in terms of making the town look good.
Councillor Bond.
I like the idea of the gazebos, but I think if we do get them, maybe we spend a few more shekels on them, make sure we actually have them like the colours done in our corporate logos and so on, so it all ties in with the whole theme of Bigos Wave and what we're trying to do, rather than trying to on our board gazebo.
I think the place shaping manager was going to make some inquiries about that line. But
Yes, with regards to do the corporate side of it, we'll work into it. We would also have to have the government logo and also the RDF logo put onto it as well, because it has come from the RDF money or funds. Yes.
you
Yes, I've made inquiries with a couple of organisations, looked at the quality of the actual gazebos, and there's a couple that are the proper market traders, really good thick hexagonal legs, which are very recommended for all year round. So we're looking at, for a 3 by 3 metre gazebo, we're looking around about £400 to £500, which includes sides, and the two companies that I've actually been in contact with will actually do certain discounts depending upon numbers.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Foley's point about the phone app. I think it's a step too far and probably unnecessary in any case. I'm sure use could be made of the website for the same purpose. I think perhaps not as part of this, the community toilet scheme, but I hope we can perhaps look at that. Well, I think we should look at that in the future, because when the toilets are closed, and public toilets are closed, or when they're unavailable for whatever reason, as they have been, I think it would be good to have a scheme like this in place, and it would need the right publicity and the right signage to make it work. But I think it would be a step forward.
Thank you. Councillor Swan.
Thank you, Chairman. I think there's lots of good ideas in here, but what we've had is lots of proposals put forward out of this without going through sequentially. I think it'd be helpful at some stage if we actually went through the list that this place shaping manager's prepared on a one-to-one basis, and then we can say, yeah, that's a nice idea or not. There's a possibility of £32,000 overall. If we were to discuss the second one, totally local street ambassador, then that might need to be going something we need to take in exempt items, because that would involve staffing and salaries. So that would, I think, be appropriate to have a full discussion if we want to follow that route through. But I think it'd be quite helpful to actually run through this, because we just heard about the cost of the gazebos, which from the report, I'm afraid I was struggling to work out what monies we had available, taking into account what we might want to do. And we might recoup some of the money on the gazebos by getting rid of those that aren't as good as we would like. Possibly we might be able to sell them for a few hundred or 50 quid or something, which might be helpful. But lots of good ideas. We've heard strong ideas, but it might be helpful if we just went through the list here and then took any additional points that aren't covered on the list, so that we've got something to do. Plus the fact I am mindful that we've got a very short period of time, or at least place shaping manager's got a very short period of time to put the application in, and clearly that's going to need some element of costings.
Okay, and I'm aware that officers only became aware of this scheme very recently as well. Councillor Page.
Yeah, I think what Councillor Strawn is saying is sensible. We just need to think about how we do this in practice now, because the window is very tight. So I'll make a proposal. So I think the place we've had a lot of suggestions from colleagues included. Maybe there's a need for the chairman to be sort of a sounding board on this, and I'm happy to talk about the executive chairman and maybe another councillor or two. I don't think all of us can be consulted all again over email. That might be a little bit too much. I think we need to give some direction as a committee. So to my mind, I think I'd like to propose that the station manager comes up with a formal proposal that's striking a number of things off this list, including the street ambassador. My personal view is that I think that would work. I don't think the hand sanitizer station is a good use of money. We've got that, and it's not going to be needed forever. The toilet scheme is probably not right for this. Money I think that's a separate conversation with Century House included, and the phone app is probably not going to work in this period of time. So I'd be happy to propose that the playground manager takes the suggestions we've made, plus his list, but minus those things that I've just mentioned, comes up with something concrete, and then relays that to the chairman particularly, and then informs councillors when the final proposal is put together. But given the tight time frame, I don't really see what other way we could do this.
So I would second the intent of the proposal. I think I would just like us to go through each of the individual items on the list, so to be clear of these, whether we think they're a yes or a no. Because I particularly I think on the community toilet scheme, I agree with Councillor Albo, and I think that is something we possibly could progress as part of this. But the principle of the way forward, I certainly agree with Councillor Page.
I think Clark would like to say something, and I think Councillor North. Sorry, defendant.
Well, I'm just saying, I second Councillor Page's proposal, because it's a way of achieving something here, isn't it? And we are up against very tight time scales. The thing I don't know what expense would be involved in the community toilet scheme anyway. It's not like we're getting cooperation for local. No expensive. It's not really good ground.
So I'm minded to go through very quickly each of these items on the list, bearing in mind we haven't got all night, but maybe any quick comments, maybe a very quick show of hands, which will give a sense of the feeling of the committee, and we perhaps move on.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate some of the comments around the room. I think to help and support the place shaping manager, I'm very conscious of the tight deadline. I think the officers need some clear direction from the committee this evening. It would be the preferred approach. Conscious that there is a bit more work to be done to get this in on time.
Okay, so very quickly then, Summer Food Festival. Any comments before we go to a very quick show of hands?
I think it probably should be delayed from a summer food festival. I think the idea of food festival, maybe summer's a bit too soon, I think.
Maybe if we extend that to be some sort of food festival.
A food festival or festivals?
Yes. Okay. So who is in support of that? Please raise your hand. I think that's the majority. So thank you. Street ambassador. Any comments on that? No. We'll go straight to the vote then. Who's in favour of that? Absolutely no one. Okay, we'll move on swiftly. Thank you. Marketplace lighting. Any comments? Straight to the vote then. Who's in favour of additional lighting? 2, 4, 5, 6. I think it's about 6 I count there, so slightly more than half, so there's definitely some interest in that. Thank you. Hand sanitizer stations, any comments? I think we could extend that to consumables, which may be a better.
Yes, consumable, no for station.
So who's in favour of consumables? Slightly less than half. Okay, thank you.
Ask against, Chairman.
Sorry?
We did ask for against, there might be abstentions.
Would you like me to do that for each of these, or shall we?
I think we should ask for against.
Against? Okay, the majority are against. Okay, noted. Thank you. Community toilet scheme. Any comments on that? Councillor Page?
I just don't think we've got any plan.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
So I think it's a good way to avoid any kind of conflict, something we don't even have an idea.
Councillor Albert.
I agree, but I think we should consider that outside of this scheme in the future.
So consider that separately. Councillor North?
I agree with Councillor Alban and Councillor Turner.
Right. Okay, so who's in favour of proceeding with this for this particular funding scheme? Oh, well, okay, thank you, that's clear. Lamp, column, drop down signage, any comments?
I think we need to be clear about what we're going to want to advertise if we are going to use it. I think and also around December last year, the ones that CBC put up actually blocked the view of some of the CCTV cameras, which wasn't very helpful. So I'm not particularly in favour of those.
Councillor Bond.
Well, lamp columns aren't ours anymore, they belong to CBC. And secondly, do you technically need planning permission to put up signage? And which I think CBC don't have permission for either, so.
In favour of drop down signage? Absolutely no one, thank you. Gazebos, any comments? I think we've spoken about that already, so let's go straight to the vote. Who's in favour of purchasing a small number of gazebos? I think that's a clear majority, thank you. Phone out, anyone in favour of that? No one, thank you. Planters, any comments on that? I think we've mentioned it already, Councillor Page.
We just need to make sure we're not obstructing ourselves with future events on something like this. I think it's something to explore, and others may have ideas about where they could go, but
I think there's a requirement that they're movable to be eligible anyway. So it would be an asset that is movable and can be relocated. Okay, who's in favour of investing in some more planters? I think we have a majority there. Any against? 2 against. Thank you. Okay, I shall run through the other things that were mentioned very quickly. Footfall monitoring. Any comments on that? Okay, show of hands, who's in favour of that? 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you. Who's against? Okay, so it's majority in favour. Buskers. So this would presumably be a small payment which would need to be determined to encourage buskers on a Saturday to the market if we didn't have a sufficient number available. Any comments on that, Councillor Strong?
Question: are the buskers collecting money whilst they're busking?
Generally, yes.
So in that respect, why should we pay them to come?
Would anyone like to respond to that?
I think, well,
I was going to say we have actually tussled with this. Maybe, to be fair, it's not a huge sum of money for us anyway. You know, we're talking 20 quid at most. So maybe that's not something for this.
Yes, we had the leading up to Christmas, we did have one of the buses who we paid a fee to, and then they topped up what they would normally do. We would be charging £150 for a 4-hour period, where we actually got that reduced, and then they busking.
That sounds great value for money.
Councillor Willow.
I would suggest they're probably not buskers and they're more street entertainers, which is probably illegal. Make sure that I think a busker is literally someone who on a street corner gets money, and I think the street entertainers and you pay. I think we need to be careful with terminology.
So let's go to the vote then. So I think the suggestion here is a bit more generic, is the street entertainment essentially on a Saturday to support the town centre. But who's in favour of that? A clear majority, thank you. It was mentioned that we used this fund to support the Hannah and Meg who are helping us organise the market. Who's in favour of that? That's about half. I'm going to ask who's against that, given it's not clear.
I am, because I think it should come out of our town council money, as we've just agreed through that recommendation, as opposed to this fund.
Yeah, if we're in the question, if we're already committed, then we may not be eligible for this fund. Next up one was extending the Christmas offer. So this could be better light show, music, entertainment. Any comments on that?
just subject to whether we are already committed. I don't know what we actually budgeted based on what we did last year.
Are we able to get additional lighting, additional permanent benefits to the town from this fund for improving the life.
My understanding, it has to be operational expenses. So if it was hiring a show for this year, that would be permitted. If it was capital purchase of assets, it wouldn't be eligible.
So it would only be a one-off this year.
But we could potentially put on a better Christmas offer than we would do otherwise with the budget we have. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I think it was one of the better things we did this last year, sorry. So I would be in favour of just because the number of people who came up to me and mentioned it, the amount of feedback we got was
So show of hands then, who's in favour of enhancing the Christmas offer? Very clear majority, thank you. Autumn event, is that different to food festivals?
I think it comes under the same banner. It was my proposal.
Sunday activities was mentioned, which could be something more focused for families and children, face painting, that type of thing. Any comments on that? Okay, straight to the vote. Who's in favour of that, please? At half. Who's against? No one.
Sorry, I missed an opportunity to comment. I guess it just goes to the point we made on a few other things, that we don't have any plan for anything there really yet. The event's working group hasn't met yet, so maybe that's not quite priority number one. I get it's important.
And finally, temporary barriers. So we have some which we've put the banners on, which has led to them being blown over. Show of hands in favour of purchasing some more suitable barriers. That seems to be a majority. Anyone against? Okay, I think that was everything. Sorry that took so long.
I was just going to say, what is how do we proceed now between today and when this needs to be?
I'd like to comment, and there was a proposal that was seconded, so I don't know if we need to take a vote on that. Yeah.
When we've got some absolute clarity about the issues that we're going to proceed with, then myself and the place shipping manager will convert these into cost. Yes. We'll make sure that this actually reflects or is somewhere close to the maximum level that we can bid for. If it doesn't look like it's anywhere near 32, I think we need to come back to the chair of the meeting and then to seek further guidance. But we will get on and begin to look to submit. We'll work on the numbers.
That's the one.
Just a slight aside, we did discuss gazebos earlier, and placement was saying about 3x3. When we've done some Christmas events before, we've actually, town council's borrowed my 8 metre by 4 metre basically, because it's very useful. Maybe rather than just we can get some 3x3, maybe we look into investing, because now we've got a space to store things, we can actually look after it, something that's 8 metre by 4 metres.
So I'll make that proposal then. See, there's an item for consideration. But this is now we've got that indication, it's now we start to have to come up with something. And if it's nowhere near 32,000, then come back and engage council in light to agree on it. So, but otherwise, this is we start.
You still happy to second that, Councillor Burley?
Yeah, I can second it. I think it was Councillor North who seconded it.
Sorry, I apologise. Okay, let's go to the vote then. So those in favour of that proposal? Hand up, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. I'm sure this one will possibly be quicker. 7C, which is the Union flag.
Yeah, so we have received some more information from the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. Normally speaking, the Union flag is flown on particular designated days. I'm kind of pleased to advise that they've now asked us to fly the flag consistently across the whole of the year, unless there's another flag flying at the time, like the county flag. So effectively, it would be a permanently flying throughout Biggleswade. And there's also an opportunity from a technical perspective to be basically flying both flags on one pole if you wanted to at the time.
So which sites are you proposing to fly the flag?
In the sites that we currently have them. So anywhere within the community that we currently fly the flag. So
the town hall and the 2 flagpoles we have in the square.
Yeah.
By the War Memorial.
Yeah.
Councillor Russell.
Do we need to invest in a new Union flag? Because the one that was on the Market Square for the Duke of Edinburgh was not in brilliant condition.
Yeah, that was one of the points I was going to make. I think a couple of other points is, do we have other flags to fly on appropriate occasions as well, as George's flag and town flag and I think the county flag as well and things like that.
We don't have a massive supply, and we did have to make some late purchases last time. So I think it wouldn't do any harm if we were to upgrade our
Councillor Allen.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I think it was nice to see the county flag flying. I've no objection to flags flying. I do object to some of the language in this report that's been sent to us. Things like our nation's flag is a symbol of liberty, unity, and freedom. Really, I don't understand that at all. It's a flag, but yeah, I could see it flying, and I particularly think we should see the county flag flying, and not just on the county day as well. It was flying the other day when it wasn't the county day, and I thought it looked good. We do have a town flag. I'm not sure what it might. The last time I saw it, I think it might have seen better days, but I'm not sure. But I think the Union flag and the county flag would look good in the town square, and I guess the Union flag on the hall.
Thank you. Councillor Strawn.
Yes, I'm all for flying the flags. I think that's excellent. As an aside, possibly a bit late, if it could be funded from the previous fund that we've discussed on the preceding item of the agenda, if we've got funds available, perhaps that could be considered as a further top up from there.
Vice Chair Manager's shaking his head, indicating it wouldn't be eligible, I think. Councillor Bond.
Well, flags are good. Flags cost real money, but there was from my recollection, in the past, you don't need planning permission to fly the Union flag, but you need planning permission to fly any other flag. From my recollection.
Councillor Manager.
I think there is some truth certainly in what Councillor Bond has just said. We do need to check that. Specifically, though, I would we may already have planning permission if we've got the flagpole to fly flags. I don't think it's for the specific flag. I think it's for the principle of flying flags. But the other thing, more general point that I didn't quite make last time was we do have a flag flying policy. It is in need of a review to bring it in line with this requirement, but there are some other elements of it as well which are not current. So just
more than happy to take the opportunity to reflect on the policy and upgrade it. Yeah.
Would anyone like to make a proposal? Councillor Manager.
I propose that we accept the recommendation to fly the Union flag every day, and that we officers review the existing policy with keeping in mind a desire to fly other flags as well, whether that be the county flag or the town flag.
Do I have to second it? Several, thank you.
I just wanted to be sure, and I think it would be worth me checking to ensure that we do have appropriate permissions. Yeah.
Any final, Place Shaker Manager.
I'd say that the planning permission would actually be centric-based, and actually own the normal.
Councillor Strawn.
Just if it could be added, possibly, then the clerk also be authorised to look into obtaining additional flags or improved flags as required.
Absolutely, yeah.
Go to the vote then. Who's in favour? Fantastic, everyone. Thank you. Okay, another grant scheme. 7D, the Community Asset Scheme. Place Shaker Manager, please.
This was looking at the community access grant scheme, which
I did the introduction. So this is about capital match funding The timescales are much more reasonable, so we have more time to consider what might be appropriate. I think it's probably a bigger conversation than what we're going to have today. So at the start of the conversation, and we're very keen to hear what members' perceptions are of it. One of my particular areas of focus, I think, is we will shortly be in a position to bring a detailed report, a detailed review of all of our play areas. Yeah, that's one of the first things I tasked our new Deputy Public Realm Manager to do. That report is not completed yet, but my sense is that there is a lot of opportunity for doing something better and significantly upgrading all of our play areas. So I think if members could bear with us, that's certainly something to consider at a later point in time.
Thank you. Councillor Ballou.
So on that point, I think that we are obviously looking at another grant scheme already for the town centre. You mentioned play equipment and the open spaces, which obviously isn't in the remit of this committee. So actually, I would propose that we don't really consider this at TCM today, that we refer it either to council on the 1st of June already, 1st of June to consider, and or the PLOS committee on the 8th.
Thank you. Councillor Ross.
I'd just like to say that I think looking at the play areas and enhancing them is a great idea.
I just also wanted to take the opportunity to reiterate, and I'm sure that the Deputy Public Realm Manager would say the same thing. I've encouraged Jonathan to go around and to look at other offers that there are within the surrounding county. And there's some really amazing offers out there at the moment that look so different to what is, or kind of feels like quite a kind of 1970s type offer for us. And it's much more safer and more appropriate than what our current offer is. It really does give members of our younger community the chance to experience something completely different. Can I just ask for a brief comment from Jonathan? Would that be appropriate?
Yes, of course, please.
That'd be okay. Jonathan, would you mind just telling us where you visited the other day in regard to the equipment? Jonathan?
Yeah, the connection keeps dropping out. I'm apologising, I'm missing some of it, but did you say where I went the other day to Hertford?
Yeah, can you just describe what's going on there?
Yeah, it's all sort of natural wood, but the play equipment, and it's instead of it being precision made, the twists are still left in the wood, which looks absolutely fantastic because it looks like a more natural approach to the play equipment itself. It was truly fantastic. It was just being finally finished when I first looked at it, but it looked really good equipment. So I'm not saying we'd better put that in everywhere, and obviously there's a massive cost in some of it. So yeah.
Basically, just to reiterate, this is something that gives the younger members of our community to really properly interact with the environment, rather than a couple of slides.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Just one other comment more generally around this scheme, and that's just to make sure that we, if any organisations are coming to us looking for funding, that we signpost them appropriately to this if it's appropriate.
Yeah, just to point on the play areas, actually, I mean, I think even prior to the lockdown, sort of 12 months ago, things are looking very tired, and clearly play areas have been one of the few. So they've had probably more wear this year than they've ever had before. And I think there are some great examples around central Bedfordshire, Leighton Buzzard being a prime example. The main park there is excellent for young children, and the population is only a bit bigger than ours. So, and there's lots of great examples, and it's something we can be very clear and very obvious are investing back in the community. So yeah, definitely a good idea to look at that.
Councillor Strawn.
Yeah, as we're talking about play areas, shouldn't we be consulting with the chairman of PLOS, because it's really under his remit rather than with respect to our remit. So I think that certainly there should be consultations with the chairman of PLOS, who I think is present today, but the non-committee member capacity. Would it be appropriate to invite him to put his observations forward?
I am happy to offer Councillor Foster the opportunity.
This is TCM, right? Really?
The proposal is always to refer it to PLOS.
Point noted. Councillor Potts is not raising his hand, so I'm assuming he doesn't have an urgent contribution. Okay, is everyone clear on the proposal? We'll go to the vote then. Who's in favour of the proposal, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, that was the end of the items for consideration. So we turn over the page. Items for information. 8A, Harris's Fun Fair. Any quick comments on that?
Just one observation, really. I've no objection at all to the fun fair. The observation, though, is that previously, when the Harrises have requested permission, it has come as an item for consideration. As I say, I have no objection to it. It's just what is our standard, as it were, as to whether it should be consideration or whether it should be completely operational. But I have no objection to this question.
Just to say that the clerk and I and others had a meeting with two members of the Harris family, and they asked for this permission, and we said there and then, if people think that that was out of order, so be it. But we've already given them permission to do it, so it's not an item for consideration.
Bob, make any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a good opportunity for us to engage with other members of our community for this item, but also for ongoing discussions. And I think it's a very it's a positive thing to be able to offer to them on the chance of building a better, more effective relationship.
Councillor Strong.
I fully support that approach. I think there are things that we can do that will benefit the town by having a good working relationship with that particular family. I think it's essential that we've got some good relations there, as we should with all members of our community.
Are you happy with that being an operational decision?
I am indeed. It was just a case of making sure we're consistent in how we make decisions, that's all.
Any other comments on that before we move on? Okay, 8B, the transport interchange. I believe the clerk has an update for us, please.
I do. Where shall we start? After taking on board members' previous concerns around this, in particular we put in a holding objection to the transport interchange. From our perspective, we wanted to try and deal with this in a kind of two-stage process. So number one was to continue to work effectively with our strategic partners connected to this and have soft conversations with our strategic partners. Being clear that there were two areas in particular that we were concerned about. The first area was effectively the bus layovers, which did not seem appropriate at all. Some members in the room at the moment were with me at the time when we had a conversation with Paul Mason and Kate, who's the assistant director at Central Beds, and articulated some of our concerns. My sense from that conversation was that we were being properly listened to. They were open to one of two things, to either manipulating and adjusting the current plan and or adding to it as a separate stream of work. There were three areas that we discussed with members present, and these potential bus layovers were at the following addresses. One was at Station Road, one was at Teal Road, one was at Church Road, one was at Hill Lane, and then one was at London Road. What we concluded at the time was that some of these feel appropriate, and some of them we would have more concern about. What we were very pleased to hear from Central Beds was that this is the start of a conversation. There are other places within Biggleswade that might be more appropriate. You know, this is just 5 areas that might be something we should consider. But the agreement was that they would go away and that they would come back with some further options for members and officers to consider. So from my perspective, I think it's a very positive thing that we're being properly listened to. At the same time, we are having a kind of mature adult conversation with our colleagues. And we recognise that we have some quite serious, significant concerns about the whole scheme. We are prepared to articulate them, and we will articulate them at the right time. But at the moment, we're being positively received, and we should carry on with that conversation. One of the more obvious things that we stressed at the time was that, this is still a kind of £2.4 million scheme. We want to really understand what the benefits are for our community when we're spending 2.4 million of taxpayers' funds. And even now, we can't really clearly see that. We want to see something more than what's currently there. So again, they've taken that on board, and they will come back to us with some more options. I hope that we can try and put in whatever the solution is into that existing cost envelope. Yep. So I think from my perspective for now, and I'm sure that members may want to comment, I would say that this is a very positive interaction. I think it's indicative of a kind of evolving, mature relationship with our partners, and that we should give them the opportunity of coming back with something that we can also bring to members at a later stage. But please see it as a kind of point in time. Thank you.
Councillor Russell.
Could I just give a further update on the transport interchange and the accessibility of the station? Because there was a meeting last Monday that Network Rail convened. Their scheme for building the new bridges with the lifts down to the platforms is going as well as it can at the moment. And they're appointing contractors who will do the detailed drawings. The other people involved, as part from Central Beds with the actual transport interchange, are GTR, and they have been talking about accessible toilets as part of this scheme. They're moving the bike racks to the other side of the bridge, near where the Amazon cupboard is at the moment, and they're going to put the accessible toilets where the current bike rack is. The thing that came out last Monday, which was a bit of a surprise to some of us in the meeting, was that it is genuinely an accessible toilet. It will be for disabled people only and those who have radar keys, and there will be no facilities for the general public. So there was some discussion about how poor that is for a station as well used as Biggleswade, that there are no toilets for the general public. So I wanted to put that in. And it does seem that Central Beds are going to be working reasonably closely with Network Rail, and they were talking about using some of the same facilities for storage and that on site. So they're trying to work together a bit better. But I agree with what the clerk has said, that Central Beds are trying to see what they can do. But as one of the ladies, because the rail users group, rail access group is part of that meeting, and the lady from that said, well, we all know the real problem, there isn't enough land. Network Rail aren't giving us enough land to do a proper job of it. And that's widely acknowledged. And of course, Richard Fuller is at that meeting as well. But whether we can still at this late stage do anything to persuade Network Rail that they might want to give us a little bit more of the land that's there that they don't appear to be using at the moment, then maybe we can have a better interchange, including the layovers. But that's where we are at the moment.
That's true.
Yes, I'm glad. One part of my question is what is happening with regard to the access station, because I think that's crucial. I wouldn't want that delayed because we can't get the details on the interchange resolved. And just an observation, station with no toilets when it has over 1 million people using it in pre-pandemic, should we say, 1 million people in a year, is something that I think we do need toilets for.
I may comment, toilets that are only accessible to part of the population. It feels discriminatory to me. Any other comments? Councillor Thomas.
Considering we're helping to upgrade a facility that Network Rail own, and it's part of their offering to the public, I think they should be a bit more helpful than they are now. We're actually trying to get something done which will make their product better. So it seems a bit anxious.
Councillor Bond, then William, please.
I too was at that meeting, and when we heard this information that they only be able to get part of it done, and they were given no toilets, we asked them to try and actually find the funds to do the job properly. We also realised as well that they didn't realise that also that we have toilets on the station, but they've been out of action for a long time because there's problems with the sewage, because it passes underneath the railway track. And that's been outstanding for many years. So that needs addressing. Clearly, you need to have toilets for able people as well as disabled people.
Councillor Wood, then, a question, is there an action here? It's obviously a matter for information, but I don't know if there's a proposal or anything. Mr. Wood.
It may be more appropriate for people at the meeting, but do we get a sense of why Network Rail are so resistant to not allowing more land to be used? Because it seems to me the land is pretty unusable for much else. And I just wondered if there's anything we could do to sort of coach them along or whatever. So I don't know if that's possible.
To answer that question, what we've been told up until now is that although the land looks as if it's unused, there are services underneath it that they need access to. So that may or may not be the case, but what was being discussed at the last meeting was that we have seen a set of drawings that show buildings there, and the buildings are no longer there. So one wonders whether Network Rail really know. Sorry, I shouldn't say that in a public meeting, but it's not good to have drawings that show buildings that are no longer there. And I think there may be a possibility of talking to the right people to see whether we can get them to have another look at it. And I've spoken to the clerk about it, and it's, we're just finding our way forward.
Yeah. As I understand it, and I'm not an expert on these matters, part of the remuneration package that's built around Network Rail is the revenues connected to car parking and the associated areas. Is that right?
They go to GTR.
Yeah. This feels like a potential barrier.
Well, the designs, there are two designs at the moment. The designs that we're stuck with, but also that there was a previous design that took into account what the town council said, and we all appreciated. There was no loss of parking spaces. But any retail revenue and the revenue from the parking spaces goes to GTR. And as Councillor Bond said, although GTR are doing this accessible toilet, they may not be able to fit out the whole of the building. There are 2 units, and they may only be able to fit out 1 unit to start with. So, I mean, what does one say? But the other point that I just wanted to reiterate, that what's been said is exactly right. The whole site, the forecourt and the whole site of the interchange will still be owned by Network Rail. They're not selling it to Central Beds for the interchange, they're simply leasing it.
Councillor Thomas.
I was wondering whether the toilets will end up a little bit like the restroom, the waiting room anyway, because it's inaccessible most of the time. But I've been down to it unless it's the main time they're there. That's the thing to look at.
Presumably, the reason for using the radar key accessible only is there's less risk of the being vandalised. But you can buy radar keys on Amazon for £2. Thank you very much for the helpful update. Thank you. Let's move on. Century House.
Okay. I think the first thing to say is that as our partners know and fully realise how concerned we are about Century House, and that we look for a more creative solution going forward. Having said that, Central Beds have commissioned Cornerstone to do a report to look at the potential options around Century House. Councillor Russell will be aware of Cornerstone. One of the directors of Cornerstone is also very closely connected to the Garden Communities project. And we have a lot of conversations with her. It's Kirsten, who I know well. It's likely that internal report will come back mid-July to central beds, and they will want some time to carefully reflect on what possibilities are put forward. I've stressed to them on a regular basis that as soon as they feel comfortable with that, we need to see that report. We need to see what the possible options might be. So I don't think that we have any detailed sense of what that looks like going forward. One of the things that they've come back to us, it's just a statement of fact, so I don't really think it helps in any way, is that they are open to the use of experimental orders connected to that area to make it as useful area as possible, and also to potentially extend our market offer around that. I mean, for me, that's mildly interesting, but it's not the message I want to hear. I want to know, how we can influence and finally make a decision around Century House. One of the other options on the table, which is not clear about whether they would support at the moment, effectively is to keep the roof area on Century House, to free up that other space in between, and to almost mold it into the marketplace, which is another option. Yep. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a definitive answer at the moment, but hopefully by mid-July, late July, we'll have some information we can share with you.
Thank you. Any comments? That was a helpful update, thank you. Town centre benches. Manager, please think on this one. You're muted. Can't hear you yet, you're still muted.
The 3 benches that are missing, we're going to get replaced by CBC because they disappeared and we don't know what happened to them. There's two benches that are not going to go back, and that's one by the sign, the sign board, and another one in front of Indian Monsoon. So I'm going to get those cut away, the bolts that are sticking up, so that's free, and then we're going to get the money off of CBC for the benches that are missing. But I'm sourcing the price by looking at a similar design, a very similar design to what we've got. It's difficult to find that one because obviously I think they've been probably discontinued, and after they've been refurbished, yeah, it's a bit more difficult to find the exact copy.
Some have accidentally been removed and destroyed, is that right?
Shall I give an update, because it's difficult to hear Jonathan from there? So there's a little bit of confusion out there. So we'll give you the good news first, and then we'll give you the confused news, if that's okay. So the good news is that 95% of our benches are now back in situ, and they've been refurbished. So that's the good news. Yeah. The not so good news is that we have some benches that are missing. Now, Central Bed's perception is that those benches may have been taken when there was a kind of realignment of some of the central furniture, and that they may have been disposed of by one of their contractors. Nope. They're not sure about that. They think that might have happened. The alternative view, which gets even more slightly bizarre, is that we have some potential bench stealers in the community who have cut off three benches and taken them away. I'm inclined to believe the first option rather than the second, because these are quite heavy to be carrying around.
And the ones that hadn't been refurbished were taken, not the ones that had been refurbished.
Yes, exactly. So as Jonathan was saying, the clear good news is I've been in contact with Central Beds. They are very clear that they will remunerate us for any costs associated with this. Yep. That the responsibility lies with us to determine the specification and the best match possible to the current offer that we have. Yep. And what I'm very conscious of, and Jonathan will sure bear with me, is every time I drive past that, I see horrible red and white tape over the central part of our town, which I really don't want to see. So it's a priority for Jonathan to order those and to get them back in situ as soon as possible. There are two spaces where we used to have benches, which are just not appropriate for benches. One of them is directly underneath the new display board which we're using, which unfortunately has a kind of pigeon problem at the moment. It wouldn't be a good idea for anybody to be sitting underneath there. So we will effectively cut off those metal structures underneath, and we'll make
Thank you, that's very helpful. And just to note, observe how many members of the community seem to be enjoying the benches since they've been refurbished. So thank you for organising that. Councillor Page.
The benches which we included a contract with to go and make good advanced benches. They all back now, because there's still some which, am I right? Are they back? They don't go through Barry. Are they back outside the ocean insufficient ships, for example? Were they the last ones?
Everything that we commissioned is now back in situ,
Is it okay?
but we do have 3 benches that should be there but aren't.
Right, okay, absolutely.
So which 2 are we replacing?
So if you were to look at Surfing Cafe, and you were to be looking at Surfing Cafe, on the right hand side, beside the memorial, we will be replacing those. Yep. If you then look to the left hand side, where the display boards are, the extreme left hand side, we're not going to be replacing those because there's a general unpleasant vision problem. You wouldn't want to be sitting underneath the tree.
The ones outside Oceans, are they going to be replaced? They are. Fantastic. I think we can probably move on. Thank you. So 8E, hanging baskets and memorial area. Jonathan again, please.
Yeah, the hanging baskets, they're coming tomorrow. We're getting them in. They'll be left on the van, at least 30 of them overnight in the new depot, because it's easier to get them in and out if we've got a load on there already. And they're going to put the baskets up from tomorrow, so from Thursday morning. So we'll all kitted out at 8 o'clock in the morning for the baskets to go up. So the war memorial itself, Madeline and I visited. We looked at some options of perhaps putting some planting on the extreme ends of both ends of the war memorial. I'm drawing some plans up at the minute so people can see them. Basically, at the narrow end, it's like 2 front quarters that will be planted up. And then at the far end, it's more like 2 half moons that will be planted up on the end. It just looks like a place where we could put some real colour into it and get it a bit more vibrant. And certainly for the Remembrance Day, it could be a nice red, not poppies, obviously, because there's no poppies around in November, but that would be the intention, to do it in red and probably white or something like that, or a colour thereof.
Can I just mention one thing? This is strictly not really town centre, because it's not the town centre. It is actually something that we've never done before. Jonathan, can you just quickly mention what we're going to be doing, ever so quickly mention what the flowers that have been purchased in regard to the retail park entrance? Because I think what we've done there is just a good thing to be hearing, yes?
Yeah, we've built a new planter that's sloping, so it'll be able to be seen from as you drive in. And my intention is I've ordered plants to be able to try and do the town emblem in the planter itself. So it should look quite nice in red, yellow, the golden crown. Admittedly, it won't have all the little points on it, but it will have the 3 points of the crown, because that's about all I'll be able to manage to do with the plant. And it'll have the blue cross, and it will have a background of red. So hopefully that will look really stunning as people drive in the city, the town, a real sort of eye catcher. So
That sounds really exciting. Thank you. Any questions for Jonathan?
Not really for Jonathan necessarily, but it does link with the war memorial area. I mean, I'm really pleased that the plants are going to be going in, but I think I may have mentioned before to colleagues, but the north side, particularly the war memorial, is looking very weathered. And I think as part of, it's all well and good putting the flowers in and brightening it up, but actually if the names and things are looking a bit faded, I think we may need to look at that sooner rather than later, not necessarily for discussion today, but certainly in advance of November. Because I think if we're going to put the plants in, we need to get the names and everything a bit refreshed as well. It's looking quite, so whether we can put that on a future agenda point maybe.
And then we'll move on. Thank you for that. Footfall monitoring, 8F, place shaping management.
Yes, thank you. This leads on from something that Councillor Page brought up earlier on the Welcome Back Fund, is footfall dashboard that the High Street Task Force are actually championing. This is something that local authorities and civic groups in England are invited to claim their own footfall dashboard to help monitor the performance of high streets and progress towards recovery from the economic impacts of COVID-19. I registered our interest on the 23rd of April, and I'm awaiting a decision, and it could be based on if there are a lot of towns or a lot of town councils that have looked at it, they may actually then get them into a hat and then draw it out that way. But I'm waiting for further updates.
We have two opportunities, that opportunity or the high speed fund.
This is actually backed by the, as part of the Welcome Back Fund, yes. So we could do.
And this is really about getting accurate data so we can see if the things we're trying with the market and the town centre are working or not, rather than just being subjective. Councillor Russell.
I'm sorry if I'm being ignorant, but how does this work? What is this actually about, this dashboard? How does it check footfall?
This is about, there will be digital input into it, but also it's about local people doing the actual the footfall count. So so there is a manual side to it as well as an electronic side to it.
So if I may comment, there are technologies that can do this. For example, there are technologies that can sense nearby mobile phones and the number of users. So many people carry phones, so you can see how many people in an area. Also, you can get special cameras that can basically count people without identifying them, and again track how many people pass an area.
So it would be that, but it will also be people having to stand there and count people.
There's a possibility that you could do both, and that's so you do the manual count and put that information into the dashboard. So the two can be married together, so you get an average.
It's not entirely clear to me exactly what we've asked for with this particular scheme.
We've asked for the electronic.
The electronic. The idea is there'd be a box somewhere that would count people passing, basically, yes, and updating that on a dashboard that we could use.
Yeah, we had a presentation on that a couple of years ago, that kind of technology, when we had a presentation about Wi-Fi in the town centre, because what was being proposed for the Wi-Fi would also do the footfall count. But I have to say that some of us who heard that presentation were a bit dubious about how that would work. So that's why I'm asking questions.
So we need to get a bit more detail about this operationally when you get a response, or certainly if we're looking to use the fund. Okay, moving on to the next, 8G, summer events schedule. Can you give us an update on that, please?
Yes, there is going to be a working group meeting next Monday on 24th regarding town centre events. We have got Street Food Heroes are back the first Friday of the month, starting from July. I'm awaiting confirmation from Ed as to that will be happening. Obviously, he's got to make sure that everything is done with regard to the regulations and proper planning. So it may actually, the actual event may become a lot bigger, a bigger surface area than it was before. There's also seasons are looking to do, they're planning a couple of barbecue evenings on the 9th of June and the 11th of June, which I think are sold out. So they're looking to do that in the evening, 7 till 9. So that's celebrating the local area. So where they would have been doing the food preparation up in the kitchen, they'll actually be doing outside. So it will be more of a community event.
Is there adverts if it's sold out? I haven't seen any adverts, but they've done very well if it's sold out.
Well, speaking to Terry Mister, but yes, that's They're also looking, and I've been getting a bit more information from them, is looking at the possibility of doing a cinema on the Market Square. So where we normally have the trailer for the Christmas light switch on, they were talking about a company in Bedford that actually provides a cinema screen. So they would have seated areas so that people could come in and they could actually have food and look at and watch a film. So I'm going to get more information from Seasons about that. But they're certainly looking to do more events to entice people into the town centre.
Are the street food events you mentioned now listed on our website?
The street food heroes. No, they haven't gone to the website until they have a firm confirmation from them.
Any comments?
Just on the website comments, so one of the things that we did talk about at the website working group earlier today was to have an events calendar on there, which will include not just our own events, but other community events and events in the town.
I think we need some of this detail down prior to the working group, actually, because there's a lot there. There's a lot here. And Sean, of our staff, emailed me, which I haven't had the chance to reply to. She emailed a few days ago with a long list of potential ideas. She had some thoughts, quite later Sunday evening, I think, which is fine. But there's a lot of potential here, and actually, our events offering that we do at the moment, I think, has been very good. It's how we transition back to that from COVID, given that it hasn't happened for a long time, and then how do we enhance it further, adding other events, but doing so in a sort of intelligent way, with the events working group having enough information in front of them to say yay or nay.
I think the events working group is meeting next week, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it needs to circulate a calendar so that we have something written down in terms of the events that are currently tentative or committed. Any other comments?
Did I understand that it's Seasons who are putting on this cinema?
They're looking at doing that, yes.
Well, I think you just need to be careful that they've done the right risk assessments. If they're taking over a large part of the Market Square, that's out with having a shop there. And you know, I wouldn't want the town council to be held responsible for anything that might go wrong.
And insurance.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, just on that, I would expect that they would need to get the relevant permissions and entertainment licenses and all sorts from Central Beds, which would require all of that risk assessment to be done.
Any other comments on the events schedule? Okay. Oh,
Could I just pass a comment, a little bit more detail on something I said earlier, just so that we don't miss it at the meeting, that's all. I just wanted to say that members will also be aware that there's a capital assets review going on at Central Beds at the moment. And again, because our partnership is working well with them, and we're looking forward to understanding exactly what that review looks like and what recommendations it's going to make and what impacts it will have for our community, so that our members can have a kind of political sense of well, part of that conversation. So that will come to us at the right point in time. And the second thing I was going to say was, I've seen the document, but it's not out of the consultation yet. Cornerstone, again, who are a private organisation, have been commissioned by Central Beds to try to encapsulate all of the change that's taking place within Biggleswade from a Central Beds perspective. All of the change management taking place, all of the projects that they have. It is a massive list. Yeah. So I'm not going to say it's for the first time, but I think there's a very much a strong focus from Central Beds that actually there's such a massive change that it needs to be managed in a much more coordinated way, and that it needs to be managed in consultation more properly with the So if you could watch this space, I mean, I've seen this. It's a massive document, and it reminds you of just how much change is taking place. So they're very conscious of that, and they want to work with us.
Could I just add to that my understanding is that Central Bedfordshire have just appointed a new place shaping director. who will join them in August. And it's a lady called Lorna Carver, who I think is still currently with Dorset with their LEP. And I did look her up, and she's got some very wide experience, including in the past with the Bedfordshire and Luton Economic Development Partnership that used to exist 10, 15 years ago. So she knows something about this area. And I think that's great because she'll be Kate and Ingrid's boss. So she'll help to pull this together and give it more weight within central Bedfordshire.
Thank you. Moving on then to item number 9, the final public open session. I'm not sure we have any members of the public, but I would also invite any feedback from those remote to understand whether you've been able to follow us remotely with the technology we've had this evening. Any comments, please?
No.
Either they're not here. Okay, thank you. In that case then, item number 10, I'll move the resolution that we go to closed session from the chair. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Any objections? Then I will close the public meeting and we'll move to the Thank you. All right. Where are we now?
We have confirmation that we're no longer streaming live.